Hello and welcome to the Doctors Who podcast. My name is Chris, and tonight we're covering chapters 5 and 6 of The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Rand and Tam return to the farm in order to ensure the Black Rider has not returned. They finish up chores and go inside when Tam brings out a sword that Rand had no idea he had. Suddenly, the door shatters and a large beast lumbers into the house. Tam holds him off while Rand runs to the forest. Shortly thereafter, Tam joins Rand in the forest but is injured. Rand runs back to the house for supplies, encounters the trolloc, and kills it, quite accidentally, before going back to his father. His father is burning up with fever, and Rand fashions a cart to haul Tam back to the village. As Tam is being carried back, he begins to have hallucinations, and in his fever dream, he reveals to Rand that he's adopted. All this and more coming up next. Okay, so maybe adopted isn't quite the right word.
Found,
yeah.
Well,
Anyway, we are the Doctors Who podcast, and my name is Chris.
and I'm Chip.
And I'm Brian.
And if you would like to donate $5, we can send you the outtakes for that intro.
There were a couple.
Anyway, today we're covering Chapter 5, Winter Night, and Chapter 6, The Westwood. So we'll jump right in with our thoughts. Chip, you're up.
All right, so this is where stuff really starts to happen. So, we start to learn a lot more about Tam. So we learn that I don't think Tam is from the Two Rivers. I don't remember if it's said explicitly, but somehow he ended up in the Two Rivers with his wife after he's been, at war somewhere else. He's got a heron-marked blade, which we don't know much about what that means yet. He found a child on a mountain, brought him home, adopted him. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of things going on here that are going to play out, I assume, over, the next many chapters in the book itself. So it's just exciting. And I like now that it's starting to kind of diverge away from being more of an homage to Lord of the Rings to kind of becoming its own thing, because the Trollocs just sound fierce.
Man, there was so much that happened just in chapters 4 and 5. Or 5 and 6. Anyway, there's so much. Yeah, there's so many that just happened. So many things that just happened here that I couldn't even wrap my brain around it. I actually read through it, parts of it twice. But yeah, just the whole finding Rand, which makes a lot more sense after we heard his physical description a couple chapters ago. It kind of ties in. But what's up with this blade? Like, is it imbued with some sort of magic? Is it, where is this blade from? It's obviously not from around here, but it's really kind of the bringing together of legend and reality, because in his mind, Rand has all these thoughts about Trollocs and how dangerous they are, and then he's like, "Ooh, a fade! I've heard those things have, fire for eyes and are 20 feet tall," and it's just his kind of small town view of these outside things that he's never seen. But I really like that the mashup of, suddenly there's just this action, and it's brought right into his living room, and there's a fight that breaks out, and he has to flee into the woods. It's just a lot of action in these two chapters, and I thought it really played out well.
So I'm gonna touch on the sword also, Brian, because I really like fantasy weapons like swords and things like that. There was a licensed reproduction that was available probably 10 or 15 years ago that I eyeballed and never pulled the trigger on, and now I'm bummed out that I didn't. But yeah, to Chip's point also, we start to find out a lot more about Tam. It seems that he got the sword fighting in a war, and it was a bad war, and you hear about the Tree of Life and Evan's words. And it's a lot of things that the reader at this point doesn't know, and they're not supposed to know. But it does start to help put the idea that these events happened, and it kind of shaped certainly Tam's life, but probably the lives of many other people. And yeah, just having all of these things from the stories that Rand was always told come to life before him, it's like, oh crap, this is real. Now that's, when you think about this kid and everything he's gone through in this chapter and these two chapters, I guess, he held his own pretty well. I was pretty impressed. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think, character building and world building that happens here. So, all right.
Well, when you talk about the story, the stories that Rand has heard, so we've got the Gleeman telling stories, we've got Padan Fain telling kind of things, news from the outside world that kind of lead into these chapters. So when Tam and Rand arrive at the farm, they kind of, Jordan, paints a huge picture of kind of what the house is like and what the farm is like. But one of the big things he touches on are Tam's books. So there's all these books that they'll sit by the fire and read at night. And he makes it sound like books are very important, and the histories that the books tell about are hugely important. And he weaves those into the story to help build, the history of this world that we're, just getting our feet wet in. So I think it's kind of it's fun to kind of read through these again and see, oh, I know where that's going, or oh, I remember that. That's important. But so there's a lot of, again, breadcrumbs that are dropped here in these chapters, and I just have an admiration for how Jordan structured all of this and kept everything straight. I imagine his notebook had to be huge.
Well, and actually, Jordan was kind of an interesting character. So my wife actually met his wife and Brandon Sanderson at the first Jordan Con, and apparently Jordan, when he would go out to parties, would actually sit in the corner and talk to himself as the different characters. So he actually, not only did he have notebooks and whiteboards and chalkboards full of ideas, but he also would talk to himself as the different characters, trying to get their voices down. So there was a
Wow.
lot of dialogue between himself where he had all of this in his mind and was just trying to lay it all out. And so
Dang.
if you can imagine how all of this was set up, most, if not all of this was storyboarded before it began, before the pen even hit the paper, proverbially speaking. But a lot of the ideas were already in his mind. And so when things are verbose on the page, a lot of it, Michelle said, was due to that's just what was going on in his head, and he needed to escape out of his mind and put it on the paper. Like an artist puts something from their brain to the pad,
Mm-hmm.
he would do the same with words. So there's a lot of detail kind of imbued within these pages that he just kind of had floating in his mind.
Wow.
Anyway, getting back on
No,
topic.
that's actually interesting.
That's still on topic.
Yeah.
That's good.
Keep doing that.
Yeah, there's just a lot to this writing, but and I completely forgot where I was going to go. But yeah, don't let me get sidetracked by myself
Yes, sir.
here.
So one thing I like is that they get back to the farm and they start just doing chores, and what it does is it kind of grounds the reader in kind of the normalcy of their routine, right? They have to do this to the sheep, and then they have to go chop the wood, and they do all these things, and they go inside and they make dinner, and they've got water ready for baths after so all of this stuff that they do on this normal basis, he establishes that, and then he starts to turn it on his ear. So first it's the sword, right? Tam goes upstairs to the bedroom, and like Rand can hear the trunk under his bed being pulled out, and he comes out with his sword. And I like the fact that this is not just like a standard medieval, hand and a half sword or something like that. I mean,
And I think even before he goes to get the sword,
he
he locks the doors, which
right?
is just something that they've never
True.
done.
Yes. But he describes the sword as having a curved blade, only sharp on one end, similar to a katana or a Japanese style sword, and he describes like with the pommel and the herons that are emblazoned on the handle and the blade and things like that. So that description is kind of fun for me because it sets it apart from other swords. Rand makes the connection. It's like, well, all the swords the merchants have are like, what do they say? Rough blades. And this is like smooth and it shines, right? To Brian's point, what's the magical property there, right? And then like when the trolloc busts through, that is like when everything just goes completely pear-shaped. But I like that he used that at the beginning of the chapter to establish a normal routine for them, so it could be upended.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take just a step back real quick, and I'm going to play Monday morning quarterback, if you will. But I kind of laughed at this point in the story where the council the night before had just talked about how the war was going to completely avoid them, like there was no risk to anything in the festival being impacted. Well, I think they're wrong. Only a couple hours after the point, it seems like the war has more or less come to their doorstep and is ready to like knock over the Beltane Tower. Or Beltane Pole. There we go.
This kind of helps characterize Tam even more, though, because Tam must have realized that with kind of some of the weird things, we know that it's been a long winter and that there's wolves and bears around and stuff's not growing. And, with the kids witnessing a black rider, Tam knew enough to head back to the farm because I think Rand thought they would stay the night in town and would attend the festival and, but something drew Tam back. So, I think it just says more about him and more, about his characterization that he's got a history, he's got instincts, and he understood that there was something not right this night.
Well, and to that point, he called them trollocs. He knew what they were, and he said, "I haven't seen one, but I've heard enough." So chances are he's heard about fades or murdrals as well. So it might be that he recognized enough of what Rand and the boys described to be like, you know what? Maybe we should. Yeah. No, but no, that's a good
one.
Mm-hmm. But when like that entire scene where the trollocs come in and like Rand is like scrambling to get out of the house, I think it captures like the panic of the moment pretty well, and I'll say that about all of like Jordan's action scenes and like the battles and things like that. And I know he was a veteran and that he saw combat, so I know that he's drawing from personal experience when he's putting, emotions and things like that in there to keep the reader engaged and going. So that is something where it's like it's I think it's accurate how people feel when they're in those positions of, being in danger.
I agree. When he writes some of those scenes and the build up to them is what's, just kind of this slow build, and all of a sudden there's this avalanche of, not a sanderlanche, but an avalanche. But they're spread out pretty good through his book, so I don't want to spoil anything ahead. But there's a lot of these scenes where there's a couple of chapters of build up, and then a bunch of stuff happens, and then there's a couple more chapters of build up, and then a bunch more stuff happens. And it's pretty masterful the way that he does that, because he draws you in, and all of a sudden it's happening, and you're like, oh, wow, I should have seen this coming. I should have known that this was going to happen, but he's pretty good at that, or was good at that.
Yeah. So, yeah,
so Tam.
I was just going to say. Brian, why don't you go?
Yeah. So I was really interested in how, again, first-time reader, long-time listener, but I really like the mystery of how Tam was able to take down so many trollocs and escape. I know, again, like we've established that he's been in combat before, but it's one tiny man versus 3 or 4 giant-sized trollocs, or like relatively large trollocs with
Larger than
the
a
ram
man.
horns, and but he was able to escape. But all he ever got out of that was a tiny cut, and somehow he was impacted severely. Like,
That
yeah, what's up with
is
that?
actually what I was going to go to. It reminded me of, Frodo getting stabbed on Weathertop by the
Mortal
Nazgul,
blade. Yep.
and just like getting stabbed with the Morgul blade was enough to almost do him in. And this seems like it's another
Almost like a poison
homage.
or some sort of a, yeah.
Ah,
It does feel like that.
Yeah. So I like that.
good call.
It's a good way to kind of move things out of the farm and back toward the village.
And it's a good plot device, is, to have Tam, suffer these hallucinations and these fever dreams that aren't really dreams. I mean, he's recalling memories, but
Right.
he's, talking about them out loud. And then through that, rather than having some sort of an exposition that some character just recites what happened, it's all part of the action that's happening. That, there's this escape from the farm. They're trying to get back to Emmons Field. And in the meantime, Rand is hearing his father kind of say these things or utter these things in this feverish state that is kind of like, well, what does this mean? Who am I?
Well,
So.
and he's recalling like the circumstances that led to the war that he was in.
Yep.
And he never says who they are that they were fighting. But he says that they were underestimated, and
well, the only thing he mentions is the layman, and the name Layman, how many died for Layman's.
And he was the one that cut down Avendasora, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
I
but he says
recall
they
that.
never make peace, never, but they brought a sapling as a sign of peace. 500 years it grew, 500 years of peace with those who make no peace with strangers. Why did he cut it down? Why? Blood was the price for Blood the price for Laman's
I couldn't
pride.
pronounce it.
He faded off into muttering once more. So it's like he's building the world through this, right? It's not just informing us about Tam or about Rand later, but it's like these are events that happen. And like Rand was found on the slopes of Dragonmount. And if we go back to the prologue, Lews Therin, in his final act on this mortal coil, turned himself into a mountain with the one power. And that was Dragonmount. I may have just...
Was Rand found on Dragonmount? I thought it was part of the Aiel War that he was found.
But they crossed the wall.
I feel pretty strongly it was Dragonmount.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
But very strange. And I'm still trying to figure out, again, first time through, what is the Wheel of Time? I mean,
he just says slope of a mountain, but I knew it was Dragonmount, so spoilers. Wheel of Time. What is it? Is that your question?
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chip.
So
that's right. You should apologize.
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, what do you
What is the Wheel of Time?
I cover my ears, but I can't cover them with headphones.
What is the Wheel of Time?
The wheel weaves as the wheel will.
Yes. And like I've been kind of chewing on this for a while, and maybe we can save this for next time too. But like, what is the Wheel of Time? What specifically does that mean at this point in the story? Like, what do we know about the Wheel of Time? But where does it stop and where does it start?
It doesn't.
Just keeps going.
So
there are no beginnings or endings in the wheel as the wheel turns.
So and Elon Morin said it in the prologue, right? We've done this 1,000 times and we'll do it 1,000 times more. So everything is cyclical. The dragon is always reborn. The dark one always breaks free. They always fight. It keeps happening and happening and happening, just with different faces and different names.
So that something like that makes me wonder if this is the beginning of the breaking of the wheel, or if this is just one iteration of the wheel's cycle.
Good question.
You've got 14 books to go to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
300,000 words.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, is there anything
Yes.
else we need to cover? I'm afraid to say anything. I don't
I
want to
don't know.
spoil anything else tonight. No?
No.
No. Okay. So Rand's
What are we going to talk
adopted.
about next time?
That's what we're going to leave you with. Rand's out in the forest. He realized
He's redheaded and he's adopted. So what does that mean?
He's a redheaded
He's Irish.
stepchild.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry. Okay. We're going to let you go before this degenerates any further. Thank you for watching and listening. Please utilize the comment section below. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, if you thought of something that we missed, or if we got something wrong. Use that like button. Use that subscribe button. Both of those things help us out tremendously. It helps our video get seen by more people. If you do like our content, we invite you to use that little bell notification, which will let you know every time we post something new. We will be back next week with the next set of chapters, which I'm guessing will be chapters 7 and 8. Things are going to start to speed up now, so hold on to your butts, as Samuel L. Jackson says. You're up, Brian.
Oh, until next time, Al on Z.